The desperate signal, the coffee had gone cold hours ago, but Communication Officer Sarah Chen barely noticed. Her eyes were fixed on the cascading data streams that painted her monitors in shifting blues and greens. Deep Space Station Omega-7 sat at the edge of human territory, a lonely sentinel watching the void between stars. Most days, Sarah monitored routine traffic between colonies and the occasional merchant vessel. Today was different. The signal had started as a whisper among the cosmic background radiation. Sarah almost dismissed it as interference from a nearby pulsar, but something made her pause. The pattern was too regular, too purposeful. She isolated the frequency and ran it through the translation matrix, expecting to find nothing more than another automated beacon from some long-dead probe. Instead, she found terror. The voice that emerged from her speakers was unlike anything in the human database. It sang with harmonics that human vocal cords could never produce, rising and falling like wind through crystal formations. But beneath the alien beauty was unmistakable desperation. Sarah had heard enough distress calls to recognize panic in any language. Dr. Vasquez, 2 communications. She called into her CUM unit. Priority Alpha. Dr. Elena Vasquez arrived within minutes, her dark hair still damp from the shower. As the station's only xenolinguist, Elena was used to being woken at odd hours, whenever mysterious signals crossed their senses. But as she listened to Sarah's discovery, her expression grew increasingly grave. "Run the linguistic analysis again," Elena said, settling into the chair beside Sarah, "and boost the signal clarity." Sarah's fingers danced across her console, applying filters and enhancement protocols. The alien voice became clearer, revealing layers of meaning hidden within the strange harmonics. Elena worked in parallel, feeding the cleaned signal through advanced translation algorithms while cross-referencing it against every known alien language pattern. "This is incredible," Elena whispered after 30 minutes of intense work. "They're not just speaking to us, Sarah. They're teaching us how to understand them while they talk. Look at these mathematical sequences embedded in the signal." Sarah studied the secondary displays showing complex numerical patterns woven throughout the transmission. The mathematics were elegant and precise, creating a universal language that transcended species barriers. They're desperate enough to teach strangers their language just to make sure someone understands their call for help. Elena nodded grimly as more of the message became clear. They call themselves the Zephyrians. Their star system is under attack by something they call the Devourers. Sarah, they're describing the complete destruction of their civilization. 3 of their worlds have already been consumed. The translation software continued processing the signal, revealing new horrors. With each passing minute, the Zephyrians described ships the size of moons that descended upon their planets like mechanical locusts. These Devourers didn't conquer or enslave. They simply consumed everything organic, leaving behind empty husks of worlds stripped of all life. "How far away is this signal coming from?" Sarah asked, though she dreaded the answer. Her instruments showed readings that made her heart sink. 47 light-years beyond our current exploration boundary. This message is nearly 50 years old. Elena stared at the translation scrolling across her screen. The Zephyrians had sent their final transmission knowing that help, if it ever came, would arrive far too late. It was a message in a bottle, cast into the cosmic ocean, hoping that someone, somewhere, would remember they had existed. But then something impossible happened. "Elena," Sarah said, her voice cracking with emotion. "The signal just changed. This isn't a recording." They listened in stunned silence as the transmission shifted. The desperate singing remained, but now it carried new words, fresh desperation. The Zephyrians were still alive, still fighting, still broadcasting their plea for help across the void. "That's impossible," Alina said. "Lightspeed transmission means ... Either our instruments are wrong," Sarah interrupted, "or the Zephyrians have developed faster than light communication." She ran every diagnostic she could think of, but her equipment insisted the impossible was true. They were hearing voices from across the galaxy in real time. The station's proximity alarms suddenly blazed to life. Admiral Marcus Steele's command ship, the UES Harbinger, had just dropped out of hyperspace alongside 3 escort vessels. Steele never traveled to the outer stations unless something serious was happening. "Patch me through to Admiral Steele," Sarah said. "He needs to hear this." Admiral Steele arrived in the communications bay within the hour, bringing with him an aura of barely controlled urgency. The 60-year-old veteran had commanded human forces through the Proxima conflicts and the Tau Ceti rebellion. He was not a man easily shaken, but the Zephorian transmission clearly disturbed him. "How reliable is this translation?" he asked Alina after listening to 10 minutes of the alien broadcast. "The mathematical verification is solid," Alina replied. "They're describing coordinated attacks across multiple star systems. Whatever these devourers are, they're methodical and incredibly powerful." Steele studied the star charts Sarah had prepared, showing the approximate location of the Zephirian system. 47 light-years is deep in uncharted space. We'd be going in blind, with no support and no way home if things go wrong. "Sir," Sarah said quietly, "they're asking for help, begging for it." The Admiral was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the stars through the observation window. Military protocol was clear about situations like this. Humanity was not supposed to interfere with alien civilizations, especially ones they had never contacted before. The non-interference doctrine existed for good reasons. Too many species had been destroyed by contact with more advanced civilizations. But this was different. The Zephyrians weren't asking for technology or trade. They were asking someone to care that an entire civilization was being murdered. "Get me a priority channel to Earth Command," Steele finally said. "And Sarah, keep monitoring that signal. I want to know everything about these devourers before we make any decisions." Over the next 6 hours, as Earth Command debated humanity's response, the Zephirian transmission grew increasingly desperate. Elena's translations revealed the systematic destruction of their remaining colonies. The devourers had found their hidden bases, their evacuation fleets, even their underground shelters. Billions of voices had been silenced, leaving only scattered survivors on their homeworld. But the Zephyrians refused to surrender quietly. Their final transmission came through with startling clarity. "To any civilization that hears this message," the alien voice sang with dignified resolve, "we are the Zephorians of the Crystal Nebula. We have sung the songs of 1,000 generations under 3 suns. The devourers come for us now, as they have come for the Cathani, the Morthok, and the children of Valdris Prime. We do not ask you to save us. We ask only that you remember we tried to warn you." The transmission continued with detailed information about devourer tactics, ship configurations, and weaknesses the Zephyrians had discovered during their desperate final battles. It was the greatest gift a dying civilization could give to the galaxy, knowledge that might help others survive. Admiral Steele made his decision before Earth Command's reply arrived. "Sarah, get me Captain Morrison at the Deathworld Colonial Base. If we're going to do this, We're going to need the best fighters humanity has to offer. Captain Jake Morrison, known throughout human space as Ironback, commanded the most elite military unit humanity had ever produced. The Deathworld Colonial Marines were volunteers from humanity's most dangerous settlements, worlds where the atmosphere could kill you, where the local wildlife had evolved specifically to hunt intelligent prey, where simply surviving to adulthood marked you as one of the toughest beings in known space. Morrison's weathered face appeared on the communication screen, his cybernetic eye glowing softly in the dim light of his command bunker. Behind him, Sarah could see other Marines going through equipment checks with the methodical precision of people who knew that overlooking a single detail could mean death. Admiral Morrison said without preamble, "I've been monitoring the Zephyrian transmissions. My people are ready to deploy." "Jake, this isn't a colonial uprising or a pirate raid," Steele warned. "These devourers have destroyed entire civilizations. We don't even know what we're fighting." Morrison's scarred face split into a predatory grin. "Sir, with respect, that's what makes it interesting. How long do we have?" Admiral Steele consulted his tactical display. "The Zephyrians are broadcasting from their homeworld in the Kepler 442 system. Our fastest ships can make the journey in 18 hours if we push the engines past safety limits." "Then we'd better get moving," Morrison replied. "My Marines didn't join the Deathworld Corps to play it safe." The human response fleet assembled with remarkable speed. 3 heavy cruisers, a dozen destroyers, and Morrison's specialized assault ships formed up around Steele's flagship. It wasn't the largest fleet humanity had ever fielded, but every ship was crewed by veterans who had learned to fight in the galaxy's most hostile environments. As they prepared to depart, Earth Command's response finally arrived. The message was predictably cautious, recommending observation and data gathering rather than direct intervention. Steele archived the transmission without reading it completely. "All ships, this is Admiral Steele," he broadcast to the fleet. "We are departing human space to answer a distress call from an alien civilization under attack. This mission is not sanctioned by Earth Command, and anyone who wants to withdraw may do so now without prejudice." Not a single ship broke formation. The journey through hyperspace gave the fleet time to analyze everything they knew about the Devourers. Dr. Vasquez worked with Morrison's intelligence specialists to piece together a picture of their enemy from the Zephyrian transmissions. What they discovered was deeply disturbing. The Devourers appeared to be a machine intelligence of incredible sophistication. Their ships were enormous, heavily armored constructs that operated with perfect coordination. They didn't seem interested in territory or resources in any conventional sense. Instead, they consumed organic life itself, breaking down complex biological structures into energy and raw materials. "They're not conquering," Alina explained to the assembled ship commanders during a tactical briefing. "They're harvesting. Every living thing on a planet becomes fuel for their operations." Morrison studied the tactical data with the focused intensity that had kept him alive on a dozen death worlds. Do they negotiate, retreat, show any sign of self-preservation? According to the Zephyrians, no, Alina replied. They operate with absolute efficiency and no apparent emotion. Once they target a system, they continue their harvest until nothing organic remains. Chief Engineer Tommy O'Connor, a grizzled veteran of the Centauri shipyards, raised his hand from the back of the briefing room. "What about their technology? Anything we can exploit?" Alina accessed her translation database. "The Zephyrians mention energy shielding that adapts to incoming fire. but they also discovered that rapid frequency changes in weapon systems can sometimes overload their defensive algorithms. Morrison nodded thoughtfully. Sounds like they're designed to fight conventional tactics. They might have trouble adapting to the kind of chaos we specialize in. The fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler 442 system, and what they found there defied every worst-case scenario they had imagined. 3 planets that had once supported thriving civilizations now hung in space like empty shells. Their surfaces were stripped bare, showing geometric patterns where massive machines had systematically harvested every trace of organic matter. But the 4th planet, the Zephyrian homeworld, still blazed with life and desperate activity. "My God," Sarah whispered from her position at the communications console. She had volunteered for the mission, unable to bear the thought of remaining safely behind while the people whose voices she had heard first went to their deaths. The planet's surface showed clear signs of the Devourer harvest beginning. Geometric scars marred entire continents where the massive harvesting machines had begun their work. But unlike the other worlds, resistance continued. Weapon fire lit up the atmosphere as Zephyrian defenders fought desperately to protect their remaining population centers. Admiral Morrison reported from the tactical station, "I'm reading massive energy signatures on the far side of the planet. Looks like the main Devourer fleet is setting up for final harvest operations." Admiral Steele studied the sensor readings. With growing determination, the Devourer ships were enormous beyond anything in human experience. Each one was larger than Manhattan, bristling with weapons and harvesting equipment that could strip a planet bare in days. All ships, battle stations, Steele commanded. "Dr. Vasquez, open a channel to the Zephyrians. Let them know the cavalry has arrived." Alina worked quickly to establish communication with the planet's surface. The response that came back was immediate and filled with shocked disbelief. "Unknown vessels." The Zephyrian voice sang with harmonics that the translation software rendered as astonishment. "Identify yourselves. Are you the ones who heard our call across the void? This is Admiral Marcus Steele of the Human Space Navy." Steele replied, his words being translated into the musical language of the Zephyrians. "We received your distress signal and have come to offer assistance." There was a long pause before the response came, and when it did, Alina had to check her translation twice to believe what she was hearing. "Humans of Earth," the Zephyrian commander sang, "we are Commander Zixtella of the Crystal Defense Fleet. We have heard legends of your species from the few survivors who escaped the devourer harvest of other worlds. They called you the Mad Ones who fight impossible battles. We welcome your madness." Admiral Steele allowed himself a grim smile. "Commander Zixthala, we're about to show these devourers what happens when you threaten people under human protection." On the far side of the planet, massive shapes began moving in the darkness. The Devourer Harvest Fleet had detected the human vessels and was moving to eliminate this new threat to their operations. In less than an hour, the forces of 2 completely different philosophies would meet in battle among the stars. The age of human isolation was about to end in fire and fury. The Deathworlder response to the Devourer fleet moved through space with mechanical precision, their massive forms blotting out entire star fields as they approached the human vessels. Admiral Steele watched the tactical display with the calm focus of a man who had spent his life preparing for moments exactly like this. All ships maintained formation, Steele commanded across the fleet communication channels. "Remember, these things have been harvesting civilizations for centuries. They think they know how warfare works." Captain Morrison's voice crackled through the cum from his assault ship, the UES Cerberus. "Admiral, my Marines are ready for deployment. Just point us at something that needs breaking. On the sensor screens, the Devourer ships resolved into clearer detail as they approached. They were not built like any military vessel in human experience. Instead of sleek warships designed for speed and maneuverability, the Devourers had constructed floating factories of destruction. Each ship bristled with harvesting equipment that could break down organic matter at the molecular level, while their weapon systems showed the kind of mathematical precision that only artificial intelligence could. HFY Dr. Elena Vasquez monitored the communication channels between the human fleet and the Zephyrian defenders on the planet's surface. Through her translation matrix, she could hear Commander Zixtella coordinating the evacuation of civilian population centers while maintaining defensive fire against the Devourer ground forces. Alina, Sarah called from her position at the sensor array. I'm picking up something strange from the Devourer ships. It looks like they're broadcasting to each other, but the signals are unlike anything I've seen before. Alina quickly analyzed the alien transmissions, her equipment working to decode the mathematical language the Devourers used for coordination. What she discovered sent a chill down her spine. Admiral, she reported, the Devourers aren't just communicating. They're sharing tactical data in real time. Every ship in their fleet knows exactly what every other ship is doing. They operate as a single, unified intelligence. Admiral Steele absorbed this information while watching the Devourer formation approach. The enemy ships moved in perfect coordination, adjusting their positions with mathematical precision to create overlapping fields of fire that would trap the human fleet in a deadly crossfire. Interesting, Steele murmured. Tommy, are our jamming systems ready? Chief Engineer O'Connor's voice came back from the engine room. Aye, sir. But I should warn you, conventional jamming won't work against their system. Their communication network is too advanced. Who said anything about conventional jamming? Steele replied with a predatory smile. Morrison, are your people ready to show these machines something they've never seen before? Morrison's laugh carried clearly across the communication channel. Sir, chaos is our specialty. The first exchange of fire came as the Devourer fleet reached optimal range. Their weapons fired in perfect synchronization, massive energy beams that could vaporize a city block, converging on predetermined points, where their calculations said the human ships would be. Instead, they found empty space. The human fleet had scattered like a flock of startled birds, each ship moving in seemingly random directions that defied every conventional tactical doctrine. The Devourer targeting systems, designed to predict logical military maneuvers, suddenly found themselves trying to track opponents whose actions made no mathematical sense. All ships execute Chaos Protocol 7, Admiral Steele commanded, using a tactical doctrine developed specifically for fighting superior forces on Deathworld colonies. The human vessels began performing maneuvers that would have been considered suicidal by conventional military standards. Ships spun end over end while firing, used their own weapon recoil to alter course, and deliberately flew into each other's line of fire to create unpredictable deflection patterns. The Devourer fleet responded by increasing their rate of fire, trying to compensate for the erratic human movements with sheer volume of destruction. But their perfect coordination, which had been their greatest strength against conventional opponents, now became a liability. Unable to predict human actions, their targeting algorithms began conflicting with each other. Alina, patch me through to the Devourer flagship, Admiral Steele ordered. Alina worked quickly to establish a communication link using the same mathematical protocols the Devourers employed for their own transmissions. When the connection opened, The response was immediate and utterly alien. Unknown organic entities, the Devourer intelligence transmitted, its communication consisting of pure mathematical concepts rather than language. You are interfering with harvest operations. Withdraw immediately or face termination. Admiral. Steele's response was delivered with the kind of cold determination that had earned him respect throughout human space. Unknown machine intelligence, you are attempting to harvest people under human protection. Stand down immediately or face the consequences. The Devourer response came in the form of increased weapon fire. Energy beams powerful enough to crack continents lanced through space toward the human fleet. But the Deathworlder vessels continued their chaotic evasion patterns, dancing between the destruction with maneuvers that seemed to defy physics itself. Captain Morrison took advantage of the enemy's confusion to launch the first human counterattack. His assault ships, designed for combat in the lethal environments of Deathworlds, proved remarkably effective against the Devourer vessels. They were small enough to evade the massive energy weapons, while carrying firepower designed to penetrate the armored hides of predators that could shrug off nuclear weapons. Target their harvesting equipment, Morrison commanded his squadron. These things might be tough, but I bet they're not designed to fight opponents who actually fight back. The Marine assault ships dove toward the nearest Devourer vessel, their weapons firing in rapid, chaotic bursts that overwhelmed the enemy's adaptive shielding. Morrison had been right. The Devourer defenses were designed to counter the desperate, but ultimately conventional tactics of dying civilizations. They had never faced opponents who treated impossible odds as just another day at the office. Meanwhile, on the planet's surface, Commander Zixtala coordinated the Zephyrian defense with growing hope. The human arrival had disrupted the Devourer. Ground operations just long enough to evacuate 3 major population centers. Human Admiral Zixtala sang through the communication link. Your warriors fight like the storm winds of our homeworld. The Devourers cannot predict their movements. Commander Admiral Steele replied while directing his fleet through another impossible maneuver sequence. We learned long ago that the best way to fight a superior enemy is to refuse to fight the battle they want. The space battle raged for 3 hours, with the human fleet using every unorthodox tactic they had learned from decades of Deathworld combat. They used debris fields as cover, deliberately damaged their own ships to create unpredictable flight patterns, and even rammed smaller vessels into the massive Devourer harvesting arrays. But it was Chief Engineer O'Connor who provided the breakthrough that turned the tide of battle. Admiral Tommy reported from his position deep in the UES Harbinger's engine room. I've been monitoring the Devourer communication network. These machines are trying to process every possible tactical scenario simultaneously. If we could overload their computational capacity, ... What do you need? Steele asked, dodging another massive energy beam. Give me 5 minutes and the most chaotic maneuver pattern this fleet has ever attempted, Tommy replied, and tell everyone to prepare for emergency power shutdown. Admiral Steele didn't hesitate. All ships, execute Pandemonium Protocol. On my mark, prepare for total system blackout. The Pandemonium Protocol was a tactical doctrine so dangerous that it had only been used twice in human military history. Every ship in the fleet began performing completely random actions. Engines fired in arbitrary directions, weapons targeted, empty space, even life support systems cycled on and off in meaningless patterns. To any external observer, it looked like the entire human fleet had suffered simultaneous system failures. But the effect on the Devourer network was immediate and catastrophic. The machine intelligence, faced with input patterns that contained no logic, no predictable sequences, and no mathematical relationships it could process, began experiencing the digital equivalent of a nervous breakdown. Their perfect coordination dissolved as individual ships began operating on contradictory datasets. "Now, Tommy," Admiral Steele shouted. O'Connor activated a system he had been secretly constructing throughout the battle. Every human ship simultaneously broadcast white noise on every frequency they could generate. The chaotic radio signals, amplified by the fleet's combined communication arrays, struck the Devourer network like a cybernetic sledgehammer. For 17 seconds, the machine intelligence that had harvested countless civilizations experienced something it had never encountered before: complete sensory overload. When the chaos cleared, the battle had fundamentally changed. The Devourer ships, cut off from their coordination network, began operating as individual units for the first time in their existence. Without their perfect synchronization, they were just very large, very slow targets for the human fleet. Captain Morrison's Marines pressed their advantage immediately. All assault teams, attack pattern Omega. Take down their command ships first. The human vessels swarmed the confused Devourer fleet like angry wasps attacking giants. Their weapons, designed to pierce the natural armor of Deathworld predators, proved remarkably effective against alien technology that had never been tested against truly desperate opponents. One by one, the massive Devourer ships began suffering critical failures. Their harvesting equipment, optimized for consuming defenseless organic matter, could not cope with human weapons that had been specifically designed to destroy things that refused to die quietly. But it was the psychological effect that proved most devastating to the machine intelligence. For the first time in their existence, the Devourers encountered an enemy that grew more dangerous as the situation became more hopeless. Every human ship that took damage fought harder. Every system that failed was immediately bypassed or jury-rigged into something even more effective. The machines had never encountered opponents who treated catastrophic system failure as an opportunity for creative problem-solving. The turning point came when Morrison's flagship, the UES Cerberus, suffered a direct hit that should have destroyed it completely. Instead of exploding or surrendering, Chief Engineer O'Connor used the damaged reactor to create an improvised weapon that punched a hole clean through the largest Devourer ship. Admiral Morrison reported with satisfaction, "I think they're starting to get the message." The Devourer fleet began withdrawing, their individual ships no longer operating with perfect coordination. Some vessels attempted to continue their harvest operations, while others fled toward deep space. The machine intelligence that had once functioned as a unified entity had fragmented into confused individual units. Commander Zixthaler's voice came through the communication system, harmonics of disbelief and joy making her words almost unintelligible. "Impossible, the Devourers are retreating. In 3 centuries of harvest, they have never retreated." Admiral Steele watched the enemy ships disappearing into hyperspace, their perfect formations replaced by chaotic individual flight patterns. "Commander, sometimes all it takes is showing bullies that not everyone is afraid of them." The aftermath of the battle revealed the true scope of what humanity had accomplished. Not only had they saved the Zephyrian homeworld, but the disruption of the Devourer network had created opportunities for other civilizations to escape similar harvests throughout the region. Over the following weeks, as human and Zephyrian engineers worked together to repair the damage from the battle, a remarkable partnership began to emerge. The Zephyrians possessed advanced science and technology, while the humans brought tactical innovation and the kind of stubborn refusal to accept defeat that had carried them across the galaxy. Admiral Steele, Commander Zixthala, sang during one of their planning sessions. "Our people have composed new songs about your warriors. We call them the madness that protects, for they bring chaos to bring peace." Admiral Steele smiled as he looked out at the joint human-Zephyrian reconstruction efforts. "Commander, I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship. And if the Devourers ever come back, they're going to find out what happens when Deathworlders have allies." Dr. Elena Vasquez, monitoring communication channels from across the galaxy, began receiving messages from dozens of other civilizations. News of humanity's victory over the Devourers had spread through interstellar communication networks, carried by refugee ships and survivor communities.